Hi friends, what's up? It's Megan. Welcome to my July and August reading wrap up. In total, I have read around 20 books, give or take, but I want to go through them quick, fast. So without further ado, we shall begin. I hope you enjoy my pug pillow also. I haven't named him yet, but I got it because I really want dogs, and this is the only way that I can affordably get my fix right now. I will start with the booktubeathon. I'm sorry I didn't do a wrap-up for that. I went on vacation just as the booktubeathon was wrapping up, and so it just didn't happen. And as soon as I got back from vacation, I was working a lot to make up for it. So I will say that I started every book that I intended to, with the exception of Fantastic Mr. Fox. But that being said, I did read 3. The first one I completed is the Spiderwick Chronicles, the Field Guide. This is book 1 of the Spiderwick Chronicles, and I've never read it before. It's by Holly Black and Tony DiTerlizzi, and it's the story of these 3 children who move into this mysterious house with their mother that I believe was once owned by their great aunt or uncle or something like that, and it's inhabited by these fairy, dwarf, elf kind of like creatures that are very tricksy, and meddlesome, and they don't like the fact that their home is being basically invaded. So the only one who's really aware of them, I believe, is Jared. He is a twin, and I guess he's been a bit of a troublemaker at school, and so his siblings and his mom don't believe him when he says that there are little beings inside this house and they're causing trouble. They keep causing trouble and essentially framing Jared for it. And so anyway, I've wanted to read the series for such a long time because I always thought that the illustrations and the covers were absolutely gorgeous, and I still do. I love the art style, and so I really wanted to love the story. And I did, but I just felt like without the proper origin story for Jared and his misbehavior, I felt like his family were being almost downright cruel to him and really unfair. Maybe it was designed to be that way, but I felt a little gypped in that respect. So I really didn't like the family a lot of the time. It felt kind of ridiculous to me. So I'm going to continue on with the series because I'm hopeful that it'll get better, and I invested all this time in accumulating the series secondhand over the past couple of years, so I definitely want to give it a fair shot and read all through it. So I intend to keep reading it. That being said, I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. I also completed Secret of the Wooden Lady. This is a Nancy Drew mystery, and I did this for the challenge of reading a book that was older than me, but it was good. Standard Nancy Drew. I probably gave it a 3 or 4 out of 5 stars. And the last book that I completed during the booktubeathon is Sex Object by Jessica Valenti. I'm much overdue for a book haul. I will say that at this point too. That has to happen soon, but it's probably not going to happen until after I move. So anyway, I got this for the booktubeathon because I knew it would be, it was on the shorter side, less than 200 pages, but I really wanted to read this. I picked it up on a whim. And so it's a memoir of Jessica Valenti. She is a awesome feminist. She started the website Feministing, and so this is just a memoir of her growing up and the experiences that she had of harassment and assault and just general everyday sexism things that happened to her up until this point that she wrote this. And so I love this. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars, and I would highly recommend, especially if you've read any of her other work. I think she's written 6 other books. So that's it for the booktubeathon side of things, and I think the next book to lead into that I just plain read was this, Full Frontal Feminism by Jessica Valenti. I finished this, I think it was shortly before or maybe right after I completed Sex Object. I'd like to think it was before, because I think I really wanted to complete this before reading Sex Object. So as you can see, I really enjoyed this, and found that I would have a lot to say about this, or that I thought a lot about. I agreed with so much of what she said, and I just had to tab a lot of her quotes. I found it kind of annoying. I mean, I think she wrote this when she was around my age, maybe 23 or something. And so sometimes the language I found kind of annoying. I found it kind of annoying that she would end almost every kind of radical statement or some shocking tidbit or whatever. She'd be like, sweet, huh? Right, huh? Cute, huh? Lovely, eh? Just end every sentence with it. Just it got kind of annoying after a while. So it felt immature in that aspect. But other than that, I thought it was well researched. I thought it tackled all these different aspects for beginner feminism and issues at hand, and there was a great resource list at the back too. So I definitely enjoyed this. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. And I would also recommend this as a feministy type read. During the month of July, I also completed Invisible Girl by Mariel Hemingway. And this is a memoir of actress Mariel Hemingway. She was in Woody Allen's Manhattan and a number of other films, but I feel like she's been best known almost for her family. She is Ernest Hemingway's granddaughter. And she did this wonderful documentary in 2011 called Running from Crazy, where she talks about her grandfather's suicide, her father's suicide, or like all these suicides that have happened in her family. It's really tragic, and sort of how she's trying to escape that mold and break away from it and not be too caught up by depression as so many others in her family were. So I think she's a really fascinating person. She's like a life coach, and she's a health coach too, and I really dig her. I love her style and I love her stuff. So this book I found in the adult entertainment section, but I think it should have been in the children's section personally. Just from the perspective that it was told, it seems that she was directing it at a more preteen, tween type audience, which is understandable. But that being said, I think I'd really be interested in reading her adult autobiographies too. She has a couple, I know. But this one, I love the way it was told. I love the childlike, whimsical quality of it and the little drawings that was in it too. So I gave this, I believe, a 4 out of 5 stars. And the last book that I completed in the month of July, on July 31st, very appropriately, it was Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. I think this is the second or third time, maybe even second, that I've ever read it. And so there's a lot that I had forgotten that happened. I obviously remembered the gist parts of it and whatever I remembered from the movies, but yeah, this really hit home. It was very emotional for me, but I'm really glad that I did it and that I was able to complete the challenge, reading all 7 books by Harry Potter's birthday and 1 book a month. It worked out. I'm really happy I did it. Moving on to August, I was at the Harry Potter and the Cursed Child release party. I read the book I think I was reading other books at the time, and so I went a bit more slowly with it than other people I'm sure probably did. So I read it, I think by the 3rd or the 4th I completed it. And it was even before then I started to see on Goodreads people's reviews coming up. And then I think what really hit home for me was Jen Campbell's review, where she did not rate it on Goodreads. She gave it no stars, and she just put LOL. And that kind of sums up my feelings about it exactly. I couldn't rate it either. I couldn't. So many people, they either hate it or they love it. A lot of people have loved it. I am not one of those people. I don't think it's canon. I feel like it's like, I can't really describe it. It's like the Aladdin TV series that was on the Family Channel. It's supposed to be like a bunch of stories that follow the same characters and plot lines as Aladdin, but it doesn't really, in my opinion. It felt like a farce. It did. It felt like this weird, really quick episode of a show, and I understand it's a play. I'm sure the play was absolutely amazing. It's gotten so many great reviews. I don't know that I'll ever be fortunate enough to see it, but taking that all into account, it was definitely not like the books at all. The characters were doing stuff that was just so completely out of character. Probably the most annoying, which I'm sure probably a lot of people loved it for, but I was just too weirded out by it, was the characters who normally hated each other, like back in the books, like Draco. He called Hermione and Harry by their first names. He called Professor McGonagall Minerva. It was just all this weird kind of stuff. Like, I expected them to be civil, but it was just strange. It just was. But I will say that I did love the character of Scorpius. He was probably my favorite thing about it. I loved him. He was so nice, so wonderful, and refreshing in the face of all this age-old animosity between his and Severus's parents. So yeah, no rating for that one. I also completed Snow White, a graphic novel by Matt Phelan. This was ARC copy sent for me by review from a lovely lady over at Candlewick Press, and I will be doing a review for this soon. Probably I'll shoot this right after this wrap up. But basically it is a graphic novel with not a ton of dialogue. The story is told mostly through its images, and it is beautiful. It's lovely, but yeah, I don't want to go too much into it, so I'll just say now that I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. If you want to hear more of my thoughts about it, check out that review that I'm going to be making soon. I also completed Flannery by Lisa Moore. This is a young adult contemporary that came out this year, and it's based in Newfoundland, which is so wonderful and refreshing because I've never read any books except I think one Dear Canada Diary that took place in Newfoundland. And so yeah, it's about this girl named Flannery. She's in high school, and it deals with growing up, basically, and growing apart from her best friend, and a lot of things happen to her and her mom too. It's a big thing, or like her relationship with her mom, who's an artist and a struggling artist, and Flannery is poor, and like really poor, but like they live in a house but they're like on the edge of losing their electricity and everything. So it was a wonderful story. Once I got into it, I was hooked, and I loved the writing. I thought it was just very well done. The reason I docked a star was because I felt like the amount of dramatic episodes and just incidents that happen, it was kind of an unbelievable, like unreasonable amount. Like I couldn't quite believe that all of that happened in this one story. It was just like every chapter seemed to be one dramatic episode after another, which I found kind of unrealistic. But other than that, I really enjoyed it, and I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I also finally, after about 3 months, completed Kate, The Life of Katherine Hepburn by Charles Hyam. This I found really slow in the beginning because I haven't seen very many of her early films, and of course there's the big like chunk of her life, like the sort of prologue before she became famous, that I would find slow. But once it got into the films I really knew, it just took off for me, and I was able to fly through it. This is the first book that I completed in a challenge to read 6 old Hollywood-based kind of books, and I will say now that I'm not going to be completing that challenge. I tried, sort of, but I really wanted to read what I wanted to read this summer, and so by the end date of September 15th, I think I will have completed 3 out of 6 books. But I'm not upset. I'm not too disappointed in myself. Because I finally got to read this. I'm reading another 2 old Hollywood-based type books, and that's more than I could say that I did last year. So I'm glad that I did. Anyway, on this biography, I believe the author mentions that he was a friend of Catherine's, or that he knew her at one point beforehand. I think they only met like twice, but the point is, I think he was either obsessed with her, like her career and her, or I almost want to believe that he was downright in love with her and totally worshipped her, because he wouldn't, if he like criticized anything that she did or said something bad that she did, he would pat it out with stuff like that it somehow made it sound wonderful. He made everything, like he made her sound perfect. And so that got a bit annoying after a while. Like he would not stop praising her and like going into descriptive detail and using adjectives about the way she was, and made her seem saint-like. And I found it unrealistic and a little annoying after a while. But other than that, I enjoyed this perspective on her life, and I definitely want to read more biographies about her, because she's definitely one of my favorite actresses. And learning about her habits, which I'd never really known about before, like the little things that she did domestically and in her private life, I identified a lot with. So I love her. I love her even more now than I did before. And so I gave this biography 3 out of 5 stars. The last book that I will mention that I read this month, I just completed yesterday, and it is The Girls by Emma Cline. Oh my gosh. I've wanted to read this for a couple of months. It went on sale at Chapters, but I just couldn't justify the amount of money that it was, and so I got Matt to find me an ebook copy of it. And I really wanted to read it this year. I really wanted to read it during the summer, because I've been seeing it everywhere, like so many reviews of it, touting it as like this year's summer it read. and it totally is. It's set in the summer of 1969, and it's told in flashback form of this middle-aged woman back to when she was a part of a cult. And it's just got Charles Manson and that story written all over it. Like, there's just so many borrowed in heaping spoonfuls chunks of that story, like that real story, put into this one. Like, I recognized so much in it. She is not one of the girls who goes on to kill the people, but she is really close with Suzanne. And I know she's supposed to be Susan Atkins, so it was just really interesting. It was so good. It takes you through from the rebelling from her mom to spending more and more time with these kids at this ranch and this guy that everybody called Jesus. And it was wonderful. Like, not the easiest story to read at times. A lot of it's really raw, but I found it really truthful, particularly about how girls are treated, how they're ignored, like disregarded, and how they're used, like at that time and currently, because she has these two teenagers that are staying with her in her middle age. This woman is staying in her boyfriend's house, and his son brings his girlfriend, and they come crash there for a few days, and she recognizes, like, in that teenage girl, herself as a teenage girl, and the treatment of girls at that time and what they were used for, and wanting to be acknowledged as existing and not being. And I identified with that, going back to my high school years and how I see it. I still see it now. And I think it's supposed to go on to prove that, like, things never change in that regard. And I thought that was very honest. I just loved it. I loved the 60s feel of it. I love this book so much. I would definitely recommend it as a summer read, or I was telling a friend, you could probably read it in the winter and use that as a sort of escape kind of thing. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you have a great week. Comment down below and let me know some of the books that you read this month, and if you've read any of the ones that I talked about and what you thought of them. So thank you so much for watching. I will see you guys soon with another video. Bye everyone.